Henry VIII has gone down in history of English royalty as a man of many depths. He started off as a young prince, charming, good-looking but as time went on, he became obese, cold-hearted and brutal. He had 6 wives and many mistresses, and it appears he found his wives and lovers all in the same place, for each and every lady was linked to another in some way or form. Catherine of Aragon, his first wife, was his sister-in-law. She had married his older brother Arthur, but sadly Arthur died quite young and very early into the marriage, so Catherine was held a prisoner in a sense of the English royalty until Henry's father, Henry VII, decided what to do with her. And as he didn't want to return her dowry payment, Catherine was married to Arthur on the 11th of June 1509, and after Arthur died, Henry VII even contemplated marrying Catherine himself, so he didn't have to return the money. But after 7 long years of being forced to live in a country that wasn't home, Catherine married Henry VIII. She was only 23 years old, and she then, for 24 years, was known as Queen. Catherine, as a queen, was given her own set of ladies, women who would help her with day-to-day living and provide her with friendship and company. At some point before 1525, Anne Boleyn had become a lady-in-waiting to Catherine, and she, by this point, had enamoured the king. He'd become obsessed with her. Now, it is important to point out that by this point, Henry had already been in a relationship with Anne's sister, Mary Boleyn, and she was the mistress to Henry for approximately 3 years, from 1522 to 1525. Anne Boleyn was anywhere between 10 and 17 years younger than the king, and he was infatuated with her. But she had seen what being a mistress to the king had done to her sister, and she refused to do the same to herself. Catherine was unable to bear a male son, and Henry had become so obsessed with a male heir that his eyes turned to Anne. He believed his marriage was cursed, and he sought confirmation from the Bible, which he interpreted to say that if a man marries his brother's wife, the couple will be childless. It seems he forgot about his daughter Mary at this point. To cut a story short for the purpose of this video, Catherine was unable to provide a son, who lived longer than a month or so, and Henry had become obsessed with Anne. Was she the answer to all his problems? Anne told Henry that if he wanted her, he needed to leave his wife and marry Anne. Henry did just that. He turned the country on its head, he split with the Catholic Church, and he annulled his marriage to Catherine and became the supreme head of the Church of England. After 7 long years, Anne and Henry became wed, and later Queen Elizabeth came along. But still no boy. So Anne Boleyn came onto the throne and became known as the Queen of 1,000 Days. She was linked to Catherine of Aragon through 1. being her lady-in-waiting, and 2. being the sister of the woman Henry VIII had an affair with during his marriage to Catherine. Now, as queen, as Catherine did, Anne was given her own group of ladies. And where do you think Henry found his next wife? That's right in the pool of ladies that surrounded Anne. Anne was queen between 1533 and 1536, when she was then beheaded on the 19th of May. Enter Jane Seymour. She became the 3rd wife to King Henry VIII, but she was on the scene from early as 1529. This means that not only was she a lady-in-waiting to Anne Boleyn, but also to Catherine of Aragon. But it wasn't until around 1535 that Henry became infatuated with her. He had gone to her father's home at Wolf Hall, and she refused his request to become his mistress, but she was willing to marry him. A key point in the beginning of the end for Anne Boleyn. Just as she had stolen the king's heart and ended the marriage between he and Catherine, Jane had now stepped in, and she would be a key figure in the imminent downfall of Anne. Anne had, it's believed, suffered a miscarriage of a boy, and this made Jane Henry's great hope for a son. And after the execution of Anne, Jane was then married to Henry and a new queen was made, Queen number 3. Another interesting point is that through Anne's mother, Anne and Jane are second cousins. Elizabeth Boleyn was the first cousin of Jane's mother. Jane and Henry in history are recorded as being happy and in love, with Jane being dubbed as his favourite. But historians debate if this is purely because she gave him the one thing he wanted, a legitimate heir, a son, in the form of Edward VI. But Henry didn't stop with Jane because, sadly, just 18 months after they married, Jane died from post-labour complications and related illnesses. Now next in line was Anne of Cleves. She didn't have any links to the previous wives of Henry VIII. She was selected by Henry to be his 4th wife from a portrait painted by Hans Holbein. She and her sister Amalia were born in Dusseldorf in the Duchy of Berg, and they were the daughters of the Duke and Duchess of Jülich-Jauerxis Cleves, Berg-Jauerxis, Count of Mark, and also known as de la Marck and Ravensberg-Jauerxis. Now, Anne was brought over to England to marry the king, but their marriage only lasted 6 months before Henry wanted to annul the marriage. He claimed, and Anne agreed, that they did not consummate. So Henry was yet again looking for a new wife and queen. During the 6 months that Anne of Cleves was married to Henry, in the circle of her ladies was a young teenage girl, Catherine Howard. She had been strategically placed there by her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk. He sought to gain favour for his family, and Catherine was just the thing. Catherine, being a Howard, was also related to the Seymours and the Boleyns. She was first cousins with Anne Boleyn. You see, Catherine's father was Anne's mother's brother, and she was second cousin to Jane Seymour, as Jane's grandmother was the sister of Catherine's grandmother. Catherine was between 15 and 17, and she caught the king's eye and then impressed him with her skills. She was young and had lived a very sad, and I would even say abusive, childhood. And when she came into Henry VIII's life, the things she had come away with impressed the king. He was now obese, impotent, and found the young Catherine to be exciting. But it wasn't just his attention she caught, and soon her past and current activities caught up with her. And then she, at the king's behest, found herself on the axeman's scaffold. Henry had been through 5 wives, and he now wanted a 6th, but this time he wanted a caregiver, someone to look after him, and he found this in the 30-year-old Catherine Parr. She was mature, and she had been married previously. Now, interestingly, Catherine Parr's links don't come from herself. In fact, they come from her mother, Maud Green. You see, Maud was a lady-in-waiting to wife number 1, Catherine of Aragon, and she was a close friend. Maud is the link that closes the circle between the wives, and she even named Catherine Parr after her friend Catherine of Aragon as a tribute to her. So the 6 wives of Henry VIII all linked to each other in one way or another, and the only one who didn't have any links to begin with was Anne of Cleves. Henry VIII was savage and a brute. He ordered executions and found that he was only happy if he had a son, forgetting he had 2 daughters who, unbeknown to him, even became queens. The interconnections of his wives just show how small a circle he was looking to find a wife, to give him an heir. And all were connected through family or employment. All were, in some way or another, connected. Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.